Welcome to Brick by Brick, a podcast produced by Move Your Mind, committed to changing the construction industry, one conversation at a time. The best way to make a change in mental health, or anything in life for that matter, is to take matters into your own hands. On this episode, I spoke to Huey, who's a wellness and personal development coach for Tradies. He saw firsthand how many issues there are in this industry and decided to do something about it. As a carpenter father and failed ex-husband, Aaron has been through his own journey with mental health and personal growth. Working his way up to management, he's seen and experienced the highs and lows of construction and the impact that the fast-paced, pressure-driven work can have on tradies at home and on site. He's incredibly passionate about helping to motivate and empower men in the industry to improve their mental health, wellness, and their outlook on life, improve their relationships, and drive them towards their goals and dreams of living and creating a happy and thriving life. I spoke to Aaron about his journey, about mental health in construction, and many other topics. It was a really great conversation. I hope you all enjoy. A huge thank you to Lend-Lease for sponsoring this podcast and allowing us to do what we do. They're doing incredible work in the construction industry to raise awareness about mental health, and more broadly, they're setting an example. I hope you enjoy the episode. Huey, thank you for making the time to come on my podcast. It's fantastic to see what you're doing, and as for this new podcast, Brick by Brick, you're one of the guests we wanted to get on here because you're setting an example, and we need more people like you, more men like you especially. So yeah, thank you for making the time.
I appreciate for having me on, reaching out. As I say, I had saw what you were doing with the Move Your Mind stuff, and you were on my list to ask to come on. So you and Warren beat me to it. So I appreciate you having me on, especially with what you're doing with the Brick by Brick. I think it's an awesome idea.
Yeah, it's been interesting because with the Move Your Mind business, we have been, working in different organizations and naturally just started working more with construction with that industry, and that led to then doing a trial of the podcast series, interviewing people in the industry, and we just had such a huge response. We started putting these out there towards the end of last year, and so many people were reaching out, and it just showed us, I think people are desperately wanting to hear from people in the industry and to be educated, to be able to talk about it, because it just hasn't been done enough. And it is happening a bit more now, but it seems like it's, like mental health in general, but I think especially in this industry, we need, more conversations, more people like you out there, spreading this message and, getting out to people.
Yeah, 100%. I think the more podcasts like this, the better, because a lot of guys now, they listen to podcasts or they listen to audibles, whether it's on their way to work or whether it's at work. They choose, and me for one, I always choose podcasts and audibles to get educated about things, rather than listen to the news or the kind of mediocre stuff. Whereas these type of podcasts, people can put them in their ears while they're working, and they can hear that there's other people going through the same stuff. And I lead by example of, I've been there, I've seen there, I've done it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the more you speak about it, the more, guys will resonate with it and think, oh, I'm actually not the only one who feels like this on a day-to-day basis, or I'm not the only one who's having these issues. Whereas when you're going through that kind of, the mental health battle, your thoughts become very internal, and you think you're the only one going through this, and very isolated in your own head sometimes, even though you can be on a site with 200-300 men. It feels very internal when you're going through that. No one understands your problems. So what you're doing with the speaking about it, and what I'm doing about raising awareness about, this is how it is, but it's not what it has to be. There's ways that we can manage our stress. There's ways we can manage our anxiety. There's ways we can look at life or jobs slightly differently, and just those little incremental changes helps you progress. But if no one's talking about them, then nobody knows that they're there. No one knows how to do them. And specifically with the construction industry, what I've found over the past 3 years of my own progression into coaching, but also my own personal development that I never did before. There's so much things that as tradies we're not told. It's just suck it up and get on with it, which is, we all know it's not a great mentality. We've had generations of men who have done that, and that's probably why we now have generations of, air quotes, broken men who don't really know how to open up about their stuff because they were never taught. And it's education, and it's also, showing the older guys that, yes, this is the way it was. It didn't really work for us. There's a slight change, but also for the new guys coming up who, the apprentices who are like 21, 22, 23, who think they're invincible because, we get paid well as tradies. So, they've got all this money when they're really young. They've got, they're doing all of the, whatever they do at the weekend. It's to educate them that, yeah, it's awesome now, but this is what could happen once you start running your own business or once you start having a family. And these are the tools to help manage yourself when you get into that stress, anxiety, this is what could happen. So it's a double-edged sword of educating the old guys and educating the new guys.
You're dead right. And that's the thing. It's sort of when you're not taught this stuff or you haven't spoken out about it, you often tell yourself that story that, what's wrong with me? Why am I weak? Why am I finding this harder than everyone else? You shame yourself, you feel guilt, and it can be so lonely. Like you're saying, you could be out with 200 other guys and bottling it all up and feeling horrible because you're thinking, well, they all seem fine. I must be broken. Where the reality is, every single person has their own version of these ups and downs. We're all human. It's like impossible not to. And yeah, the culture, I guess, is so ingrained in this construction industry because it's just been, male dominated. It's been, like you said, push things under a rug. It's been about just pushing forward, and the money's good, but the demands and the hours are so high that a lot of the time, it's very hard to maintain balance and, have good relationships outside of work. So, yeah, it's a big thing. So I guess, like, anyway, what I'm interested in learning is about your story. How did you come to doing what you do now? Tell me about your story and what you went through, and what was the catalyst, I guess, for you making that change, and then, what you actually do now.
Yeah, so it all kind of came to head about 5 or 6 years ago now, I think. So I have obviously an accent. I'm not from here, so originally from the UK, Scotland, and Ireland. Me and my wife moved out here in 2011, came traveling, decided wanted to stay, and everything was going well. Living in Australia, I've always wanted to come here, so it was like living the dream type thing. Living, working, everything was good. We had our first daughter, so kind of ticking all the boxes that you should do. Everything was going well. No real issues. And then we found out that we were pregnant with our second daughter. I was a site manager at the time, running a few jobs, and then had a friend pass away back home, quite tragic circumstances. And for me, that was the kind of first real loss I've ever had of someone close to me. So it was about a year before I could get back to Scotland to kind of, be there at his grave. And it hit me then that I had lost someone. It kind of felt like we hadn't spoke for a while because, he's on one side of the world, I'm here. And, I was grieving the whole time, but it wasn't until I was standing over his grave and I was like, it hit me. So then when I came back to Australia, that was when I really started to my mental health started to slip a little. I was angry all of the time. I was obviously pissed off that my mate had passed away. Was working a lot. Things just started to kind of feel like they were snowballing. So, I was arguing with my wife at the time. I was kind of angry. They used to call me the angry Scotsman on site because I'd be running around like shouting at everyone and just, things just weren't good. Like I could just feel within myself that something, everything just felt like a struggle. Didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. Like I was constantly thinking about what was going on at work. You know, me and my partner weren't getting on great, young family, all of the kind of standard stuff. I went to mental health, went to the doctor, got a mental health plan, spoke to somebody, and kind of came out, understood that it was, this is normal. You're grieving for the loss of a friend, these things are going to happen. So kind of got back on the path of things were going good. And then it happened again, had a friend here pass away. Again, pretty drastic circumstances. And then that kind of just snowballed again. It got me thinking about life. Both of these guys had two young kids, young family like me. And it really got me thinking, like, shit, what am I doing with my life? Like, life's going by so fast. And, I'm like, I'm working too much. I've got a young family. And again, the anxiety and the stress all kicked back in. And this time it was kind of upped a little bit. Like, it felt worse. Everything, I was struggling to breathe half the time. It was everything just felt like it was closing in on me. And I was like, right, something has to change here. Like, I'm just not in where I want to be. And it took a while the second time for me to realize this. And it was my partner said to me, like, I can see that you're not in a good place again. And I was just, again, going through the motions. I was like, no, I'll be fine. And then I got to a point where I was like, no, actually, yeah, I need to go. So again, went back to the doctor, got on medication, and things picked up. But I was like, I need to do something like this. Two friends have just passed away. I don't want to be in construction all my life. And I didn't know what to do or where to go. And I went to see a clairvoyant. And she taught me a few things and said, the best way to remember your friends or your friend who passed away is to live life like they would. And I thought, I'm going to do something different. I want to give back. I want to live life for a purpose. I didn't know what it was. And I went to a personal development weekend just because I was starting to think about things differently. I started to do some personal development books, audibles. And there was a guy called Peter Kuna. He was on stage and he was the head coach. And what he was able to do within the space of half an hour with 2 or 3 different people, just help them, look at life differently and, change their situation from victim to, going somewhere. I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be able to help somebody change their life. Like, how do I do this? So I went and did their coaching course. I became one of their coaches. And we just coaching, life coaching, general coaching, people who have goals, aspirations. And I thought, I can see what it's doing for me on a personal level. Like, I was being more mindful. I was starting to meditate. I was starting to look into ways to manage my anxiety. I was still having the anxiety around going to site, waking up in the morning thinking, have I ordered concrete? Do I have enough people coming on site? All of the things that are standard stock site stuff. But it was getting to the point where I was starting to get anxious again. So I started to use, some of the breath work on the way into work. So by the time I got to work, all the anxiety had dropped and I was good to go. Like, I was good for the day. So I started to just do all of these little things and thought, this is working. Like, I want to give this back. And I thought, I've learned all this stuff over the past 3 years. That's helped me as a person. It's helped me on site. People were starting to notice things. They were like, how are you so like cool, calm, and collective? There'd be things happening on site, and I would just like completely contrast to being that angry Scotsman. It was like a complete flip to, like, one of the guys used to call me the Zen master. He's like, you're just so cool and calm. I'm like, well, nobody's died. Like, if whatever happens today, we can clear up and we can come back tomorrow and start again. And it was just a complete mind shift change. And I thought, there's so many men in the construction industry that could benefit from this. So then I started to just have conversations with guys about it and about what I was doing. And the more and more conversations I had, it was like people who you would never think would talk about this stuff. And they were like, oh yeah, I've tried this and it's helped me, get through a bad time, or, and I thought, okay, there's something here. So I rang around like a few of the, the building agencies and the master builders. And I said to them, what's out there for our guys? And they introduced me to like mates in construction and, a lot of the suicide stuff, which is obviously massive in our industry. It's needed. But I was like, is there nothing like prior to this? Is there no like, wellness improvement? Is there no personal development for the guys? And I in my 17 years and being in the trade, both in the UK and here, I had certainly never seen anything, but I just wasn't sure whether it was on the bigger sites. And I pretty much got a no. Everyone's like, nah, there's not really anything like that. And I was like, shit, that's a huge gap that we're missing to go from depression to suicide talks. That's the only two things in the industry, which are all well and good. They're raising awareness. I was like, but need to be taking the guys, sitting them down and saying, right, what's working for you? Where are you in life and where do you want to be? And then helping them bridge that gap, but also helping them understand why they got to where they're at, the habits that they kept doing. And so, yeah, over the past, what are we now? Probably 14, 15 months, I've been reaching out to individuals. I've been talking to companies and just trying to push the message pretty much that, this is huge for our industry. It not only helps the men as individuals become, better men, fathers, partners, but if we were to have a site where, people weren't screaming and shouting and things were able to work better, men would be able to be a little bit more. They don't have to be like happy and dancing and high-fiving with each other. No one's going to see that on a site. But if they were just to understand that, life's not as bad as it feels. There's more ways to manage this shit. That's what I'm now doing.
Lend-Lease is proudly sponsoring the Brick by Brick podcast. They're committed to the health and safety of their people and those they work with, and have been acknowledged externally for their focus on providing healthy workplaces. Lend-Lease is certified as a globally healthy workplace in recognition of their focus on employee health and well-being. In addition, Lend-Lease won the multinational employer category at the 6th Global Healthy Workplace Awards. They have a holistic approach to health and well-being and continue to grow their focus around mental health. Lend-Lease genuinely care and are out there not just to make a difference in their organisation, but in construction and society as a whole. We're very proud to have Lend-Lease as a sponsor of the Brick by Brick podcast. Yeah, well, that's amazing, mate. And so a lot of it's working one-on-one with these people in the industry?
Yeah, so my main aim is to, rather than just I have a presentation, a 4 presentation around, wellness and how to manage your anxiety and, the things to do, the mind shift change between when you leave work, when you go home, and vice versa, when you leave home in the morning to go and work, just little tips and things. But then it's more with them one-on-one. Yes. So the 4-hour awareness presentations and the, are you okay days, they're awesome. But there needs to be another level of like sitting down with the guys and saying, right, okay, like this is what I've done for the past 5 years. It hasn't worked for me. Okay, so let's look into that. Where is this coming from? Whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's bad relationships, whether it's gambling, just letting them understand that these are all part and parcel of life, but there's ways that you can stop them. There's ways that you can improve your life. It doesn't have to be that kind of dead end. And with the trade industry, a lot of it is week to week. So, the guys are getting paid week to week, or, they don't think any further than that. Yeah. And I want to kind of take them to like a place where they can look at life right now. It might be shitty, they might feel like they're working 12 hours a week. They're 12 hours a day, which isn't uncommon in the industry. But it's like, okay, what are you doing it for? Like, you may hate your job, you may hate what you're doing, but what is it doing for you? It's putting a roof over your head. It's putting clothes on the kids' backs. Okay, so what's the next 5 years look like for you? Spanning out a little bit so that it doesn't feel like they're kind of stuck in that one space. They're actually doing it for something. And then, what other goals have they got? Like, what I find is that the construction industry, the trade is their identity. So, I'm a plumber, I'm a sparky, I'm a carpenter. And then there's like, okay, no, that's your job. Who are you? Like, who are you out with that? Who are you for your family? Who are you for your kids? Like, who are you for yourself? They get stuck because they pretty much spend, 75% of their life at work. I was
going to say, like, because that's so interesting, but yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Is that just because like it's dominating your life more than a lot of other industries, so that just becomes their identity, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Like for the majority of guys, they're at work 6 days a week isn't uncommon in the construction industry.
Yeah.
I know when I started out, I used to work for a company and we would do 12-hour days, 7 days a week, 3 weeks solid. And a lot of guys do this. The money is great because when you're a young lad, for me, it helped fund, a place back home, coming traveling. But there's still guys who are doing that yet in their 50s, the late 50s. And that's all that they know.
How do you sustain that? How the hell can you sustain that?
The energy drinks is the next thing. Like there's just constant caffeine, energy drinks, and like there's other, I've seen, other things being used on sites, and it's just wearing down and wearing down and wearing down. So it's, while you're doing it for a purpose, while you're doing it for the money and it's great, there has to become a point where you're like, okay, draw a line in the sand and say, right, I'm got to myself to a point. Now I want to enjoy what I'm doing. I don't want to be doing this till I'm 50, 60. And that's another thing I learned, that if I was to be told a lot of the financial things now as a 21-year-old, I would be in such a better financial state than what I am now. Like, if someone was to have sat me down and said, right, okay, put X amount away into an account that you don't touch, or, just manage your money better, I would be in such a better financial state. But I was never told, like, it's just get to work. You work your wage, your week, you get your wage back at the end of the week, and that's it. And there's guys who I know who are still working, their 50s and 60s because they didn't do that, or because they've, they're failed marriages, so they're like paying child support for their kids, and there's a whole load of things it comes under. And that's another one, like relationships in the building industry. I know so many broken marriages, and unfortunately mine became one of them. I have an ex-partner and 3 kids, but we share the kids and we have a great relationship, which is very unusual. That's another thing that I hear, like, guys don't get to see their kids because they've got a bad relationship with their partner, or the two of them can't put their own shit and their ego aside for the sake of their kids, which is very common. And unfortunately in these days, it's very common when it comes to separations and marriages. But it's like, if I can do it with my partner, there's no reason why other people can't sort it. And it's like, there's a lot of things I've done that I wish I hadn't done, but they're now lessons. There's things that I've learned the hard way, and at the time it feels like it's the end of the world. But now looking back, it's a lesson I've learned from that. I'm like, okay, it was me that was in the wrong there, or maybe I reacted rather than I should respond. And it's educating the guys that, yes, this may be the life that you're living, but it doesn't have to be. Like, if you're not happy, you can fix it.
Yeah.
And what I get from a lot of guys is, I don't need to talk about my stuff. I tell the boys down at the pub. I'm like, okay, so all the guys down at the pub, the social aspect is perfect, but all the guys down in the pub are in the exact same spot as you. So it's just an echo chamber of you all talking about the same shit, but nobody's actually fixing each other.
No solution. Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense, because, they're all, it's sort of mutually sharing the frustration and all these things they're going through, but not having any solution or any, knowledge to go and make that change. And that's just, doesn't lead to anything positive. It's just crazy. So I guess it's like, that change in the industry is just so important. What do you see as the biggest issue in the industry? Like, would you say it's to do with the education on this? Is it to do with, the working hours? I know there's a lot of talk about, in the companies we've spoken to, about, changing it to have 5-day work weeks instead of these 6-day work weeks. Is it to do with that? Or, what would you say is like the most important issue in the industry to address at the moment?
I definitely think with the way that the suicide rate is going, it's definitely more education about speaking up for one, letting guys know that if you're feeling like this, one, it's normal. There's people to speak to. Don't bottle it up. Don't, obviously think that the only way out is to do something that, it's not going to benefit anybody. I think that's number one, because the rates, suicide is not something I've ever really had much of a drive to, but the more and more I did the mate stuff and the the spoken to the TX guys, and I've looked into the suicide rates, it's phenomenal. So I think that's number one, educating them, telling them that, we need to have more conversations about, why you are feeling the way you are. The 5-day work week definitely benefit, having that proper 2-day rest because of the hours and because of the the workload. But a lot of the guys, at Saturday morning is ingrained in them, and it's educating them that that's maybe how it was. It doesn't have to be, 5 days. Spend a Saturday morning on site, then go home and don't go straight to the pub. Like, go and spend time with your family. Go and do things. Do something for yourself, and then have a Sunday rest. I think that the 5-day work week is definitely would be a good option, so that they can actually have time to switch off. Because another thing that you find was, depending on what role you're in. So, like, as a site manager, my phone could be going off from 5:30 in the morning till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Like, you don't really get the chance to switch off. And as much as our partners are like, oh, could you put that down? It's like, you are the sole responsibility for a site. So you've got deliveries coming in, you've got, people who might not turn up the next day. Like, it's not like a clock out at 5 and that's it, done. So it's a very bit, and it's like
so frustrating.
It's, but I think it's managing the frustration. Like, I think it's having the foreknowledge to say, okay, this is what I do. Okay, this is my job, and you have to have that conversation with your partner, and but also there has to be some set of boundaries where you can turn your phone off and say, right, okay, like, this can be dealt with the next day. I think it's workload as well. Like, there's a construction industry, a construction site is a constant evolving thing. It's never going to run smooth. There's always going to be these ups and downs, but it's how you manage that. It's how you manage the state of, okay, a big one is responding rather than reacting. I think that was one of the biggest changes I saw in me, but I also could see in other people that, if something goes wrong, it was an instantaneous snap to blame somebody or, rip somebody out for what they didn't do, rather than step back and say, right, okay, that's not ideal. Let's regroup. Like, what can we do? Like, what was wrong there? How can we redo it? And I mean, it's easy to say, like, but on a site when there's a million and one things going around, it's very easy to get into that kind of, you're getting pulled left, right, and center from all different trades, suppliers. You've got, depending on what type of job it is, you might have, I did a lot of work at Sydney Uni, so you've got like the uni staff, plus you've got students around. Like, there's a lot of moving parts, but I think it's coming back to yourself at certain points and, like, taking 5 minutes to just digest everything. Like, then you can think clearer, you can make better decisions. You're not reacting just out of impulse. You're actually thinking, right, okay, well, this has happened. Okay, so I need to get such and such on the phone to come and help me do this, or I need to, close this side of the site off. So I think it's a fast-paced industry, but I think there's definitely ways that we can manage it on site if we educate our guys properly. And also the flip side of that is, changing the mindset of guys. Now, most people who work on site know at least one or two people who are like the grumpy tradesmen. They've been there for years. They whinge and moan about coming to site every day, but they'll come back and do it. Like, they'll just constantly do it because that's all that they know. They're maybe late 40s or late 50s, but it's like, okay, I get it. You can't retrain. There's nothing else you can do. How about you just flip your mindset on, like, you've actually got a job. You've got something that's worthwhile. You get paid well. You actually have a job, that puts food on the table. It's just changing their mindset that, okay, this might not be ideal, but what's the benefits for you? And then when you go home, you can do your own thing. Like, there's definitely a lot of moving parts of the industry that I could pinpoint that we need to change, but I think just educating the guys.
Yeah.
Firstly, and showing them there's other people who are doing these things and that they work. Like there's, for me, it's like I kind of lead from a point of this is where I was. I know what it's like to be on the dark side.
Yeah.
And how, how the sites can run you down and how it can be. But if you choose to better yourself, if you choose that, okay, this is just my job, this is my identity, and you can separate the two, it becomes a hell of a lot easier.
Oh God, yeah. And I think, it's so powerful that you're out there doing that, having people like yourself who have been in the industry, they can relate to. That's how you resonate. That's what I've seen through where the mental health talks that I've done when I've been into schools or companies or wherever you go. It's like if you can give them a message from your own personal experience that they relate to, then they're going to listen more. So, and it's so true what you're saying as well about education, and also this is a pretty broad area. It's fantastic that we've got things like mates and all these other awareness things, but also we need practical stuff. The awareness is good, but we need, like what you're doing, how do we actually teach them the skills, the tangible things to make those changes? How do you get that to start happening? Because that's the hard part, because like you can have all the information in the world and you can have even the best intention to go and make these changes, but if you don't actually create the habit, if you don't take that action, and a lot of the time people won't because they're just too overwhelmed or too many other too many bad habits, then no change happens. So it's really, really important to be like on the ground. Let's work with you guys, let's actually drill in, what are we going to change, let's track that. That's like very, very important.
Yeah, it's massive. So it's I had a kind of a 4-stage to change that I kind of implement and explain to the guys. It's like the first one is awareness, being aware of like, okay, this isn't working for me, or I'm grumpy all the time with the kids, or I'm shouting at the kids, or I don't keep friends, I don't have any friends, I just the awareness of something isn't right in your life. And then the second one is ownership, saying, right, okay, I'm going to take ownership of this. This is either a me problem. It's me who's the one who's always arguing. It's me, I can't keep like a relationship, or I'm in a bad environment. I'm in a bad place. I need to take ownership of this and do something about it. And then the third one is getting educated. So, we live in the world where there's everything on social media, YouTube, you've got Chat GPT now. You can like Google anything you want. There's no reason why somebody can't find the knowledge. There's, we live in a world where it's literally on the palm of our hand. Like you can literally Google what's wrong with you, or you can listen to an audible in it. There's no reason. But the last one and the fourth one it's the accountability.
Yeah.
You need somebody to hold you accountable. Like we're all well and good saying, I'll go to the gym tomorrow, I'm going to start fresh next week. I'll stop eating this, or I'll lay off the beer, or we all have that good intention, but life, our bad habits always kick in and take over that. So the cell inertia of what we do and what we used to do because it was comfortable, we'll go back to that. Whereas if you have someone accountable, like a coach or a mentor or a men's group, somewhere where they can say, right, okay, what are you doing? What have you done this week? Or small kind of action steps. That's what helps the progression. So
yes,
we need to, 4 guys need to be sitting them down and having either group sessions or one-on-one sessions. Men will open up more about what's going on for them, but in a group setting they kind of see that there's other guys going through the similar situation, or there's guys that they may be thinking something but somebody else will say it or ask the question. It's like, oh shit, yeah, that's right, actually I feel the same. So it's it's getting in those areas for them to feel, whether it is just a one-on-one with me, like going into what's on for them, they may feel that, comfortable, or that might be a bit too intense for them. So we do it in a group session where everyone's working on the same things. I think it's just the education that this is, if you want to improve yourself, you're going to have to do these kind of what might seem strange and uncomfortable things about talking about this stuff, or doing these small habit adjustments every day, cutting out some of the stuff, the bad foods, or cutting out the bad people, like the environments. Those five guys that you go to the pub to every night, and you see them 5 days a week, and you talk about the same shit. If none of them are improving yourself, then you need to step up and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And what you'll find is they'll either go one of two ways. They'll go, oh, look at him, what's he doing, trying to better himself? Or they'll go, oh, what's he doing? What is it you're doing? And then you improve the guys around you, but
Exactly.
it just takes that step of being that one person to say, okay, enough is enough. Like, I can't keep doing this. I deserve better, or I want better. And the only way you can do that is just by going out and just telling the guys that this is what's being done, this is what you can do. The options there.
Thank you so much for supporting Move Your Mind. We're expanding the offerings of the organization, and we're tailoring everything we do to suit you guys and to try and answer to all of your needs and the questions that you send in. The book is available globally. You can find all of the links at nickbracks.com/book. And we've just released the Move Your Mind community. We've currently got a men's community group, a women's community group, a general group. We're going to be loading up other groups. And you can find all of the links at moveyourmind.me. This group's been created based on the needs of what we've heard and learnt throughout running Move Your Mind. And we have live events, we've got courses, we've got huge amounts of value, the ability to share information, share ideas, work in groups together to grow and share your learnings, to learn about different topics. You get email reminders. There's a whole lot of features in there. We're constantly updating it, and we're so excited to share it with you. You can find all of the information about it at moveyourmind.me. Absolutely. No, I love everything that you've said here, and we finish up with 5 closing questions. But before I go into that, just want to ask you, what are some things that you personally do on a daily basis or regular basis to look after your well-being, your mental health? Do you have sort of things that you do to check in with yourself and daily rituals and things like that?
Yeah, pretty much. So for me, meditation is a massive one. It's been huge in calming things down for me internally, but also just in general. So I have 3 young girls, and trying to get them out the door in the morning can be crazy to go to school. So once I've dropped them off to school, irrespective of where I'm going, whether I'm going to site or whether I'm going to a meeting or whether I'm, doing something else, I'll stop in the car, I'll park up somewhere, and I'll just do either a 5 or a 10-minute meditation, just sitting, just thinking about nothing. Mm-hmm. And I found that just it drops the fog of everything. It helps me think clearer. And sometimes I'll do this on the way home as well, like before I get to the kids, or before I get to a meeting, or before site, I will just stop and do it. And it just brings me back to, doesn't feel like everything's running away from you. As when you've got a tick list of things to do, or you have a mental list of things, it can feel like you're constantly running, chasing yourself. So meditation is a huge one, and it can be as simple as just stopping and putting the headphones in and doing a guided one. Mm-hmm. I have a couple from a guy who's taught me, and breath work as well. So I have a box breathing is something that I learned, and I utilize this. This is one of the first things that I used to do on the way to work in the morning. I would do it in traffic, because I would be thinking about on my way to work. I could feel the stress of the day coming. I could feel things are getting overwhelmed, and I used to do this in traffic on the way to work. And by the time I got to work, I was on a level, I was zoned, I knew what I needed to do for the day, who I needed to speak to, and I could just think clear. And both of them, breath work and the meditation, have been huge for me.
I love those. Yeah, both, so, and box breathing is great, and a really, good practical thing for people to put into practice. So yeah, I think that's really, really great. Thank you for sharing those. So yeah, these 5 questions can be sort of just whatever answers come to mind. But the first one is, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Oh, best childhood memory. So I was born in Germany because my dad was in the British forces. And in 91, just before the Gulf War, we took a Winnebago camper, and we did like a tour of like it's called the Black Forest in Germany, in Switzerland, and for me that's a huge childhood memory. Like that, I still think back to that. It was like, yeah, it was almost like a time that like, land that time forgot. It was just feel so far away. So that's one of my favorite childhood memories.
Love that. Love that. What do you think is currently the biggest issue in the construction industry?
Definitely suicide and mental health. Like, I think, I don't know whether it's because it's now the field that I'm in, or if it's just because it's, everything that's happened over the past 30 years. But I hear a lot of guys taking their own life, and I just think it's such a waste of life. And I think to stem from an industry where I've grown up in, it's just, I can't imagine that being an option and why it should push us that far. So I think that's definitely a huge one right now.
That's a massive one, yeah. And where do you see the industry heading in the next sort of 5, 10, 20 years? Do you see it improving in mental health in these areas, or a bit of both, or yeah, where do you see it going?
I definitely think there's going to be an improvements, because there's a lot more talk of it now, and there's a lot more people doing the work. There's a lot more people raising the awareness. What my fear is that it flips the complete opposite way, and it becomes used as just a tool for lazy people. I see a lot of that, especially with the younger generation coming up, of how I'm not saying that they lack resilience, but a lot of the younger generation are a lot easier to cry mental health rather than actually be the issue. And that, my fear is that it gets used as that kind of boy cry wolf thing. When the guys are having a bad day, they just don't want to come into work, or they use it as an excuse. So I definitely think we're heading in the right direction. I just hope it doesn't fully flip.
Very relevant point. Exactly. It's got to be that middle ground. And yeah, I can totally see what you mean by how that could happen. What's your personal definition of happiness?
Freedom for me. Freedom's always like, you see, I have hustle to happiness behind me, and it's a motto that I go in. And for me, it's happiness isn't easy. It's not something that comes easy to a lot of people, but if you work on it, if you implement the things, and you take that, the freedom that comes with that is huge. Whether that's the freedom to choose what you want to do, or just not feeling that you're stuck, because a lot of people just feel that they're stuck in a situation, and that's the only place that they're going. Whereas if you start working on yourself, you start working on your mindset, your happiness, your environment, then it gives you a lot of personal and financial freedom. So yeah, it definitely comes down to the freedom of being able to do things.
Yeah, it's a massive one. And final one, what are you most proud of?
I think for me, it's when my girls point out the work that I'm doing. Like, I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and they know that daddy is coaching and helping people. And it's the little things that I've taught them. So I teach them meditation, and me and their mum are very kind of conscious parents, where we're teaching them the things that we were never taught. It's like that phrase that instead of giving your kids what you didn't have, teach them what you didn't know. So for me, it's the progression that I've had, that I've seen, and people have pointed out over the 5 years through my personal development journey, and what I'm able to give back to them. So yeah, I'm very proud of that, because I think if I hadn't have sorted myself out, I would be completely different, and my kids would probably definitely have a different dad, and that may have given them a different outlook on life.
I love that, mate. Well, yeah, thank you for being so open, and I'm sure everyone who listens to this is going to take so much out of it. A final thing, anyone listening, if they want to learn more about you, I'll put this in the show notes, but where can they go? Where should we send them?
Main places are Facebook, Aaron WD, Aaron William Daniel Huey, Instagram, Aaron Huey, Coach to the Tradies, LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
And my website is hustletalkcoaching.com. and feel free to reach out with any questions, or if I can help in any way, whether it's speaking to your team or, it's just even having a general conversation. Like, I'm open book, like I've been on this podcast. I just want to help as much people understand that there's a different way of life. So if I can help in any way, on any facet, please reach out.
Amazing. Well, again, anyone listening, all the links will be in the show notes, so make sure to check it out. And Huey, thank you so much for making the time, mate. Thank you for the work you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job and probably saving lives. So it's incredibly important, and would love to stay in touch. And appreciate you making the time.
Appreciate it, Nick. Likewise. Would love to do as much possible to help you with what you're doing as well. So
thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Cheers, brother. Have a good one.
Thanks to Aaron Huey for joining me today on Brick by Brick. And again, a huge thank you to Lendlease for sponsoring this podcast.